I like singing that song. But it ends up being more of another one of those songs where it turns into a prayer and not a song. Like I'm basically saying, okay, God, yeah, I need you. Could you show up and show out? It's like the more I sing it, the more I want to sing it. But I know people want to sit down. So it gets complicated. So right now, let's just pray. God, we need you. We need you every day and in every way. We need you to shine a light and show us all of the ways that we tend to push you out of our lives so that we stop and invite you in. We need you to help us be the people that we are meant to be. We need you to help us know what real love is and how to show it to others and how to receive it. We need you. We need you here. We need you now. In your names we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So last week was what are you focusing on? Or what are you focused on? I forget how I worded it. This week is what do you believe? I'm not really asking you because, again, like last week, we could get in trouble if you started answering these questions. But it's very similar to last week. But this week, we're going to be talking Numbers chapter 13. And I'm going to actually read them from the slides because what I did to y'all today is I took two different versions of the Bible and merged them because I liked pieces and parts of each. So today you have the Amplified version and you have the Message. And in some places you have paraphrasing. So Numbers chapter 13 is the story of the 12 scouts. So verse 1, God said to Moses, "Send men to explore and scout out for yourselves the land of Canaan, which I give to the Israelites. From each tribe you shall send a man, every one a leader." So Moses sent scouts. Next one. Moses said to them, to the scouts, "Get up and go, and see what the land is, and whether the people who dwell there are strong or weak, few or many, and whether the land they live in is good or bad, and whether the cities they dwell in are camps or strongholds, and what the land is, whether it is fat or lean, whether there is timber on it or not. And be of good courage, and bring some fruit of the land." So, we skipped. They leave. The scouts are like, all right, that's the mission, we're done. So they go. And in verse 23, we pick back up, and they're there. So they cut down from there a branch with a cluster of grapes, and they carried it on a pole between two of them. Wait, now how many of y'all eat grapes? Does it take two people to carry grapes? So these are some big old grapes. They carried it on a pole between two of them. And they returned from scouting out the land after 40 days. They came to Moses and Aaron and to all the Israelite people and brought them word and showed them the land's fruit. They told Moses, "We came to the land to which you sent us, and it truly does flow with milk and honey. This is its fruit. But the people who live there are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, there we saw the sons of Anak." Caleb quieted the people and said, "Let's go up at once and possess this land. We can do it." But his fellow scouts said, "We are not able to go up against the people of Canaan, for they are stronger than we are." So they brought the Israelites an evil report of the land which they had scouted out, saying, "The land through which we went to scout out is a land that swallows the people who live there. And all the men we saw were giants. We were in our own sight grasshoppers, so we were in their sight." Now we're in chapter 14. "And all of Israel cried with a loud voice, and they wept. They all grumbled and deplored their situation, accusing Moses and Aaron, to whom they all said, 'It would have been better to die in Egypt or in the wilderness. Why does God bring us here to die? Let us choose a captain and return to Egypt.' Joshua and Caleb came forward and said, 'Do not rebel against God. God is with us. Do not be afraid.'" So, what do you believe? And does it matter? And What do you say about what you believe? And does that matter? So board members, get ready, because this one's going to hurt you a little bit. There's a scripture, Hebrews 13:7. It says, remember your leaders, those who spoke to you the word of God. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. All right, that hurts. I'm worried. Let's be still. What if I make a mess? Are you really watching me? What if I really blow up? What if I really go into the ditch? And with the 12 scouts, they all go to the same place, they all see the same things, and they all come back with a report. 10 of them come back and say, okay, so this is the grapes that grow there, and no, we can't go take these people. We need to just stay put. And then the 2 people are like, whoa, wait, we can do this. What was the difference between the 10 and the 2? Was it a matter of what they believed when they were there seeing things? Or was it a heart condition? I think it's a heart condition. Because they all went to the same place. They all saw the same things. And then they bring the evidence back. I mean, come on. If someone came in here, 2 people, having to tote grapes on a pole, how many of y'all gonna be like, let's go live there? Because 1 grape would feed you for how long? Mm-hmm. And yet, there they are with these grapes, and they go, can't be done. Mm-hmm. And Israel says, all right. And then Israel starts complaining. As leaders, it matters what we say we believe. And it matters what and how we portray it. And when this came to me, I was like, God, I don't want to preach on that because that's like smacking my own behind. Mm-hmm. And God was like, well, do it anyway. As God often does. So, if you're supposed to watch your leadership, and then you're supposed to imitate their faith, the 10 who went back and said, can't be done, if you imitate their faith, how far do you get? Not very far. And the really crazy thing about this story is if you go back to verse 1, God flat out says, I'm giving you the land of Canaan. I'm giving it to you. It's a promise, right? So 12 people go. They all know God told Moses to send us here. God told Moses we're going to take this land. So our job, the expectation was, our job is to go scout it out and report back so we can plan how we're going to move in there. And the reality became, they went over there and 10 of them got scared. Now, you're laughing, but how many times has God told you or shown you through other people or used a television show or whatever tool has to be used? How many times has Holy shown up to start pushing you in a direction and you're like, that has to be holy. Okay, I can do this. And then you take the first couple of steps and you're met with resistance. And when you're met with the first resistance, which way do you go? Do you back off or do you keep going? The difference between the 10 and the 2 said, God said we could do it, so we can do it. Quit rebelling against God. So Thrive, you weren't Thrive forever. You were Gentle Shepherd for a long time. And I don't even know how often, but Holy would show up and say, this is who I'm calling y'all to be. No matter what the name on the wall was, this is who I'm calling y'all to be. And you'd have a handful of people that would say, okay. And then you'd have a handful of people who would say, no way, can't be done. Now you're this group and you're this size. And it's still the same thing happening. God shows up and God says, this is who I want you to be. And everybody with their mouth says, okay. But then with their actions, they go, no, can't be done. Can't be done. We can't do it. It's too hard. It's too complicated. It requires too much. What's the difference? Why? Why is it okay to say yes sometimes and then sometimes we're like, we can't do that? You know how many times me and God had the conversation about whether or not I could pastor? And it was always me saying, God, I can't do that. And God would say, it's what I want you to do. God, I can't do that. The people you're wanting me to preach to, they all know me. Like, a couple of them have known me for years. They know who I am. They know what I've done. They know where I've been. And you want me to stand up and talk about being a good Christian in front of these people or just being a good human being? And it was funny because today before church, and this just clicked, Kay was renaming everybody. You became, you became Martha. You became Ruby. I became Clariton and then Clarissa. Joni was Josephine or something. Everybody got a new name. When God comes in, and when you let God lead the way, you kind of get a new name. Joshua wasn't always Joshua. But Joshua started leading, and Joshua started doing all the things Moses asked of him, and Moses realized Joshua's going to be the one. And Moses changed Joshua's name. And when God changes your name, there's something that happens. All that stuff becomes your tool and not your torment. It becomes a way for you to go, yeah, that was true. I did that. But here's what I learned. And here's what God brought me from. And here's how God used that. And here's how this happened. And here's how that happened. And it matters what we believe. Now, if you're Israel, and they all come back, and 10 people say, no. And 2 people go, yeah, let's go. What you gonna do? If you're Israel. What Israel chose to do was go, yeah, no, we out. We want to go back to Egypt. Can we go back to Egypt? In Egypt, they were slaves. They were in slavery. They were in bondage. They were oppressed. They wanted to pick up their oppression and put it back on instead of going into freedom. You know how many people in this room do that every day? God says, I didn't put you here to, let's move it. I didn't put you here to suffer. I didn't put you here just to torment you. I put you here so I could love you and you could show other people what it means to be loved. That's what I put you here for. And you keep wanting to pick up this mess that somebody from 10 years ago told you about yourself. It's the stories we hear. Which ones do we believe? Which ones do we hold on to? You can't be used of God. You're gay. What? Now if you hold on to that, what happens? Some of you, God keeps trying to get you to go in a direction and you keep just picking all these things that keeps it from happening. You put the things in your path, the barricades and the blockades. God will say, I'm going to use you, okay? God will say, Lynette, this is your path. This is what I want. Maybe not with a neon sign because we've already covered that. And you start to take a few steps, but then it gets scary. So when you get afraid, what do? You reach for your safety blanket. Well, what's your safety blanket? For a lot of people, it's who they once were. Let's go back to this. Nothing was expected of me when I was over here. When I only had to play the keyboard, I was good. I just hid behind it. Nobody had to hear me talk. We just sang some songs and I was done. We start choosing to be what we once were because we don't want people looking at us. And why don't you want people looking at you? Because you done decided to listen to what people done said about you. Instead of saying, God promised me, and God said I could, so I'm going to, you're going, yeah, well, Susie said, or Martha said, I can't do it. So I can't. You know how many times you stop yourself? Because of what you tell yourself? It ain't even 10 other people. And the reason I said the board wouldn't like the little scripture is because it says, look at your leadership. If you're going to look at us, me and the board, what are we showing you? What are the expectations? And are we meeting them? If you're in band, you're considered leadership. What are we showing you? Are we really living lives that people should be imitating? If you're in the children's church room, you're in leadership. What are you doing? How are you living? And will it hold up? What's the expectation? And what's the reality? Am I saying we all have to be perfect all the time? No, because you can't. But what I am saying is we have to behave in ways that what we say we believe is evident in the way we live. And sometimes it's easier for us to choose the old way because that's comfortable. We know it. Like it'd be very easy for me to revert to the person that only probably 2 in the room know. It would be easy. Nothing was required of me over there. Over there, I could go and come as I pleased. You made me mad? I'm out. I ain't got a deal. Now what happens? Things get troubled. What's the expectation of me? Do I stay? Or do I go? What would you expect? I'm asking. Stay? Okay. So when trouble comes, do you see me stay? Or do you see me be like, oh no, I'm done with y'all. Y'all figure that mess out on your own. Because if you do see me running and saying figure it out on your own, you do see me doing things that don't line up with what I say I believe. There's this word, it's called accountability. You need to come to me. You need to come to the board and say, you know, she talks a lot about this, but then she did this. What do we do? How do we reconcile these two things? How do we fix it? They came back 12 people with totally different stories. And Israel chose to believe the worst one. You know what ended up happening to those 10? Bad things. You know what ended up happening to Joshua? He became the leader of Israel when Moses died. And Caleb, he had a good life too. But those 10, not so much. The more you rebel, and I can tell you this one from true experience, the more you rebel, the longer it takes. And God doesn't just go away. Holy doesn't just back off and be like, okay, that's fine. Holy keeps coming along and going, hey, pay attention. I'm talking to you. And then you're like, no, give me enough beer so I can drown out this voice in my head. And then Holy says, you ain't going to find me in the bottom of that. Well, I'm going to try anyway, real hard. And then Holy says, okay, well, what about this? God, I done told you, I'm not, we not talking. And it's the stories. It all comes back to the stories that we feed ourselves and that we let others feed us. Some of you, the whole time I've known you, you have been people who knew what you believed. You knew that Holy was real. You knew that Holy expected things of you, and you patterned your whole life on that. And you were chugging along and everything was great. Everybody looked at you and said, that's a person who knows who Holy is. And then you wobbled. And why did you wobble? Because for the briefest of seconds, you looked this way. And when you looked this way, you saw a giant. And you didn't think you could get rid of that giant. And so then that made you want to start going back this way. Let's creep back over here. Let's get back over here where nothing is expected of me. Let's get back over here where it's easy. Let's get back over here where, even though over here is where I'm in slavery. Over here is where I'm in bondage. But because we're so afraid of this one thing, we hold on to things we should not be holding on to. We hold on to self-hatred and self-doubt. And we hold on to people that was never meant to be in our path because we're scared to let them go. Amen. And then, instead of when God goes, look, this is how this is went wrong, let's fix it, we go, no, God, I'm going to hold on tighter. But I promised you this, and you're choosing this. And why? So here we are again, with God looking at us and telling us, I know who I've called y'all to be. I keep sending people to tell you who you're supposed to be. And you keep saying okay, but then you keep not moving. So today I'm asking you, what do you believe? And does it matter? I think it does. I think it matters what we believe. I think it matters if we can put it into words. And I think it matters if our life decisions match what we say we believe. I think it matters if we are in leadership, we perform as leaders should perform. I think it matters that we as a community hold one another accountable. I think it matters that if you see somebody falling off into the pits, you grab them and hold on to them. I think it matters. So do you remember who Thrive is called to be? Do you remember? Do you remember what the purpose was? Do you remember who God said we could be? Or has it become something else because that's easier? These are questions that we have to answer. And I will admit to you, as the person who has to stand here, sometimes I don't even like answering these questions. I do remember who we're called to be. We did like a whole series on it. We're called to do the basics. We're called to be people who really seek holy. Not just lip service, but really mean it and seek with our whole hearts. We're supposed to be people who love one another. And that is a whole other sermon. Because it is a revolutionary kind of a love. It's not what we see in movies. It's not what we read in fairy tales. And we're called to healthy relationships with one another, with our extended community, and with God. And a part of healthy relationships is dealing with your stuff, answering the questions, and figuring out what needs to be done. So that instead of being people who are rebelling, who are believing the bad reports, we start believing who holy says we are. We start doing the things holy says we should do. No matter who stands up here. No matter who's on the board. It matters who holy calls us to be. It doesn't matter who Kay says or I say or Martha, Marcia, whoever. It doesn't matter. What matters is, are you seeking holy? And is it evident? Is there a big old thing of grapes following you everywhere you go? Probably not unless you're the Fruit of the Loom man. But still, is there evidence? Because that's who we're called to be. People who do those things. And it hasn't changed. Even when me and God argue about it. Even when I say, I want it to be this. Because this might be a little easier. And God says, no, it's this. Well, they don't listen. Yes, I've said that, sorry. Keep saying what you're supposed to say anyway. It sucks, I don't want to. A lot of things suck. But this is what it's supposed to be. We could be like Israel in this story. And we could start moaning and complaining about how much better it was way back when. We can gripe. We can wish we had so-and-so back as the piano player, so-and-so back as the preacher, so-and-so back as the board. But all of that gets us nowhere. It just makes you stuck. Because the question Israel should have been asking, and the question we should be asking, is, okay, how do we make that happen? How do we make it happen? So God says, this is the promised land, go. How do we get there? Who do we believe? What do we believe? And does it matter? Hard questions again this week. And I don't even know if we wrapped our heads around the ones from last week. Who are you going to be? What story are you going to tell? And whose life are you going to make better or worse? Because that's what happened here. One story made all of Israel miserable because they believed them instead of the two. Doesn't matter if you're in the minority. It matters if that's where you're supposed to be and Holy said you were supposed to be there. Doesn't matter if you're a mega church if you ain't doing what you're supposed to be doing. Doesn't matter if you have all the money in the world flowing into your church. If you aren't living what God says you're supposed to live. If you're not on the path that Holy says you're supposed to be on. If you're not exhibiting evidence of Holy being present and showing you. Show us your glory. How many times did we sing it? It matters what stories you hear. It matters what stories you let into your heart. The ones about us as a community and the ones about you as an individual. And if you get stuck and you think you suck and you think you're the worst thing that was ever walking, go back and read. Because Holy says you're beautiful, you're wonderful, and you're loved. Israel forgot. God promised. So they sat down and cried. Don't sit down and cry. Remember who Holy says you are and why it matters, and share it. And all the people said,
Amen. Amen.